The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Subspace follows predictable patterns. Warp fields obey mathematical certainties. Energy and matter dance according to equations refined over centuries of exploration. But what happens when something defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? When an object appears that should not exist, carrying a passenger who challenges the very foundation of scientific reality? The USS Enterprise-D was conducting a routine stellar cartography mission in Sector 221G when Lieutenant Commander Data's positronic brain registered an impossibility. His fingers moved across the ops console with superhuman precision, golden eyes narrowing, a purely learned behavior, as his android nature felt no confusion, only the recognition of paradox. "Captain, I am detecting a subspace anomaly bearing 27 Mark III. However, the readings are inconsistent with any known phenomenon." Captain Jean-Luc Picard rose from his command chair, tugging his uniform tunic down in that characteristic gesture. 20 years of Starfleet service had taught him that inconsistent from Data meant genuinely inexplicable. On screen, the view screen shimmered, revealing a tear in space itself, not a wormhole, not a temporal rift, but something that seemed to bleed colors that had no name. Violet-green energy crackled around its edges, and at its center, tumbling through the void, was a small pod of utterly alien design. "Magnify," Picard commanded. The pod resolved into focus. Its hull was scored and blackened, covered in geometric patterns and symbols that resembled no written language in the Federation database. But what caught Geordi LaForge's attention, his visor translating electromagnetic spectra into visual information, was the energy signature radiating from within. "Captain, I'm reading a life sign inside that pod. Single occupant. But the energy field surrounding them, it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's not emanating from the pod systems. It's coming from the life form itself." Counselor Deanna Troi gasped, one hand moving to her temple. Her Beta's empathic senses, refined through years of training and service, suddenly flooded with something vast and ancient and impossibly calm. It wasn't thought exactly. More like the echo of thought, reflected across dimensions that shouldn't connect. "Captain, I sense presence. Intelligence. Great age. And," she struggled for words, "purpose. Profound purpose, but colored with loss." "Hail them," Picard ordered. "Universal translator active." Lieutenant Worf's deep voice rumbled from tactical. "No response, Captain. The pod's communication systems are completely incompatible with our technology. I am also detecting weapon signatures. Some form of directed energy weapon inside the pod. Recommend caution." The subspace tear was collapsing, its edges contracting inward. The pod tumbled toward the closing rift, structural integrity failing. Picard made the decision that defined his captaincy, curiosity tempered with compassion. "Transporter room, lock onto that life sign. Beam directly to Cargo Bay 2 and erect a Level 5 containment field. Security team to the Cargo Bay. Dr. Crusher, prepare for potential medical emergency with an unknown physiology." "Aye, Captain." Chief O'Brien's voice came through the comm. "Locking on now." "Captain, the transporter's having trouble getting a clean lock. That energy field is interfering with the confinement beam. I'm compensating, but this is going to be rough." The Enterprise's transporter was a masterpiece of 24th century engineering, capable of disassembling matter at the quantum level and reassembling it with perfect fidelity. But as O'Brien worked his console, sweat beading on his forehead, the familiar hum took on a discordant note. The matter stream fluctuated wildly, and in Cargo Bay 2, the containment field shimmered as something materialized that the transporter's pattern buffer struggled to fully comprehend. When the transport completed, two things became immediately apparent to the security team standing ready with phaser rifles. First, their visitor was physically diminutive, no more than 66 centimeters tall, with green skin, large pointed ears, and deeply wrinkled features suggesting extreme age. Second, despite the rough transport and the collapsed pod's obvious trauma, the being stood perfectly calm, leaning on a gnarled wooden walking stick that had somehow survived whatever catastrophe brought him here. Ancient eyes, yellow-green and filled with centuries of wisdom, surveyed the cargo bay, the containment field, the armed security officers. And then, in a voice like whine through ancient trees, the being spoke. Turbulent the journey was. Grateful for the rescue I am. The grammar was unusual, processed through the universal translator's best approximation. A small, three-fingered hand gestured toward the containment field. Necessary, this barrier is not. Harm you, I will not. The security chief tapped his comm badge. Bridge, we have a situation. Our guest is conscious, mobile, and speaking. Picard's voice came back immediately. I'm on my way. Maintain containment until we know more. In the cargo bay, the small being seemed to sense the tension. He closed his eyes, and several security officers gasped as the walking stick, which had been leaning against the being's side, gently floated upward, rotating slowly in the air before settling back into his three-fingered grip. No tractor beam. No anti-grav unit. Just impossible movement that violated Newton's laws and everything Starfleet science held as fundamental truth. The Force, the being said softly. Different here, it feels. Distant. Strange. But present still, it is. Always present, the Force is. When Picard arrived 2 minutes later, trailed by Data, Troy, and Dr. Crusher, he found his security team staring at a small alien who sat cross-legged in meditation, hovering 15 centimeters above the deck plating without any technological assistance whatsoever. The being's eyes opened as Picard approached the containment field. For a long moment, two sets of ancient eyes met, one pair human, shaped by Earth's long climb toward enlightenment, the other alien and ageless, carrying memories of a galaxy far beyond Federation space. Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise, Picard said formally. You are aboard a vessel of the United Federation of Planets. We mean you no harm. Can you tell us who you are and how you came to be in our space? The small being descended slowly to the deck, weight settling with a soft tap of his walking stick. A slight smile crossed his wizened features, sad, knowing, and tinged with the weight of exile. Yoda I am. Jedi Master. And lost I am. Very lost indeed. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. The containment field hummed between them, separating not just two beings, but two entire philosophies of existence. In the conference room above, questions were already forming that would challenge everything the Federation thought and knew about the nature of reality, power, and the boundaries between science and something far older. The observation lounge of the USS Enterprise-D had hosted countless first contact scenarios. Picard had negotiated with crystalline entities, debated with energy beings, and even shared tea with Klingon warriors. But as he sat across from Master Yoda, with his senior staff arranged around the conference table, he found himself in entirely unprecedented territory. The containment field had been deactivated at Yoda's request. Or rather, at his patient insistence that barriers of force could not contain what he represented. Dr. Crusher had completed preliminary scans, her medical tricorder providing data that raised more questions than answers. The being's cellular structure was carbon-based. DNA sequencing showed biological compatibility with standard humanoid classification, but there were anomalies. Microscopic symbiotic organisms throughout his bloodstream that seemed to generate and respond to energy fields her instruments could barely detect. Midichlorians, Yoda had called them, when she'd asked. The Force they channel. In your universe, different they feel. Quieter. But present they remain. Data sat with perfect android posture, his positronic brain recording every word, every gesture, cross-referencing against 17,000 known languages and cultures. The universal translator was working, but imperfectly, Yoda's speech pattern suggested either a language structure fundamentally different from known linguistics, or a deliberate choice in communication style that carried its own meaning. Master Yoda, Picard began, his voice carrying the diplomatic warmth he'd cultivated over decades. You mentioned being lost. Can you tell us where you come from? Your technology, your biology, they match nothing in our databases. Not Federation, not Klingon, Romulan, or any species we've encountered. Yoda's long ears twitched slightly. He sat on a specially requisitioned chair that accommodated his small stature, his gnarled walking stick resting against the table. His eyes moved from face to face, human, android, Klingon, Betist, assessing, measuring, sensing. From another galaxy I come. Another time, perhaps. Clear, the journey is not, even to me. He paused, and something ancient and sorrowful flickered across his features. The Jedi Order I led. Guardians of peace and justice we were. But fallen, the Order has. Betrayed. Destroyed. In exile I went. And through the darkness of space I traveled, when the anomaly took me. Troy leaned forward, her empathic senses fully engaged. What she felt from Yoda was unlike anything in her experience. Layer upon layer of emotion, controlled but not suppressed, acknowledged but not ruled by. Grief, yes, profound grief. But beneath it, a wellspring of something that felt like hope tempered by hard-won wisdom. The loss you carry is immense. I'm so sorry. Feel it, you do? Yoda's gaze fixed on her with sudden intensity. Sensitive to feelings you are. The Force, perhaps you touch, without knowing its name. Counselor Troy is half Betist, Picard explained. Her species has natural empathic and limited telepathic abilities. It's a neurological trait, well documented in Federation medical science. Science. Yoda pronounced the word with something that might have been amusement. Explain the Force with science, the Jedi tried, long ago. Midichlorians measured, we did. Counted them like stars in the sky. But the Force, greater than measurement, it is. Binds the galaxy together. Surrounds us, penetrates us. Between all living things it flows. Geordi's visor focused on Yoda with renewed intensity. We've been analyzing the energy field we detected around you. It doesn't match any known form of directed energy. It's not electromagnetic, not gravitic, not tachyon-based. It seems to respond to your intentions rather than any technological interface. Telekinesis. Data added, his tone purely analytical, is theoretically possible through intense electromagnetic manipulation of an object's molecular structure. However, your demonstration in the cargo bay showed no corresponding energy emission detectable by our sensors. The mechanism of action remains inexplicable. Yoda lifted one three-fingered hand. On the conference table, a PDD, a small tablet device used for data display, rose smoothly into the air. It rotated slowly, moved to Yoda's hand, then floated back to its original position. The movement was so smooth, so natural, that it seemed less like technology and more like the object obeying an unspoken request. Technology, this is not. Will and connection it is. The Force responds to life, to intention, to the energy that connects all things. In my galaxy, strong the Force flows. Here. He closed his eyes, his small frame settling into absolute stillness. Distant it feels. As if through water I reach. But there, it remains. Worf had been silent throughout the exchange, his dark eyes never leaving Yoda. His Klingon upbringing valued warrior prowess, and despite the being's small size and obvious age, something about Yoda radiated capability. You mentioned a weapon in your pod. A directed energy device our sensors detected. Ah. Yoda reached to his belt, where a cylindrical object hung. Several hands moved toward phasers before Picard raised a calming hand. My lightsaber. A Jedi's weapon. Elegant. Civilized. Not as clumsy or random as your phasers, I believe you call them? May we see it? Data asked with genuine curiosity. Yoda activated the device. With a snap hiss that seemed to echo in the Force itself, a blade of pure green energy extended from the hilt. Roughly 90 centimeters of contained plasma that hummed with barely restrained power. The conference room's lights seemed to dim slightly in its glow. Dr. Crusher's medical training kicked in immediately. That's a plasma containment field. But the power requirements for something that size, the heat generation, you should be suffering severe burns just holding it. The kyber crystal, the heart of the saber is. The Force it channels. Dangerous to those untrained, yes. But to a Jedi. Yoda moved with sudden, startling speed. The green blade whirled in a complex pattern, moving through attack and defense forms with precision that would have taken human reflexes far beyond their capabilities. Then, just as quickly, he deactivated it and returned it to his belt. An extension of the will, it becomes. Picard absorbed this demonstration with the careful consideration of a man who had seen many impossible things. Master Yoda, your abilities are remarkable. But they pose significant questions for the Federation. We are a society built on scientific principles, on understanding the laws that govern our universe. What you call the Force, it seems to exist outside those laws. Outside? Yoda's ears lowered slightly. No. Different, perhaps. Deeper. Your science surfaces it touches. The Force, to the depths it reaches. Conflict, there need not be. I must respectfully disagree. Data interjected. Your demonstrated abilities violate the second law of thermodynamics, conservation of momentum, and several fundamental principles of quantum mechanics. The energy required to levitate an object must come from somewhere. Yet our sensors detect no expenditure of energy from your body beyond normal metabolic function. Sense the Force, your sensors cannot. Measure it with instruments, you cannot. Feel it, you must. Yoda's voice carried a gentle rebuke. Limit yourselves, you do, by trusting only what machines tell you is real. Picard felt the conversation reaching a philosophical impasse. Master Yoda, regardless of the mechanism, we must address practical concerns. You are clearly a refugee from a great disaster. The Federation offers protection to those seeking asylum. We can provide you with quarters aboard the Enterprise while we determine how to proceed. But I must ask, is there any way to return you to your galaxy? Your time? The small Jedi's face grew heavy with thought. Return? Know this, I do not. The anomaly that brought me, closed it has. Feel my galaxy, I cannot. Alone in the Force I am, for the first time in 900 years. The weight of that statement settled over the conference room. 900 years of connection severed. 900 years of experience, cut off from everything familiar. Troy's voice was soft with compassion. You're not alone, Master Yoda. Whatever brought you here, the Federation will help you. Kind you are. But understand you do not. Without the Jedi Order, without other Force sensitives, incomplete I am. A teacher without students. A warrior without a cause. A piece of a greater whole, now adrift. Picard stood, his command decision made. Then perhaps you'll find a new purpose here. The Federation is built on the principle that infinite diversity and infinite combinations makes us stronger. Your wisdom, your unique perspective, these have value, regardless of whether we understand their source. Guest quarters on Deck 8. Full access to our databases, within reasonable security protocols. And he paused. I would very much like to continue these discussions, Master Yoda. I suspect we have much to learn from each other. Yoda rose, leaning on his walking stick, and offered a small bow. Generous you are, Captain Picard. Accept your hospitality, I will. But warn you, I must, attention my presence will draw. In my galaxy, those who sense the Force often seek it. For good, or for ill. Quiet, my stay here may not be. As if in response to his words, the red alert klaxon suddenly blared through the ship. Worf's console lit up with incoming tactical data. Captain, we are being hailed. It's a Romulan warbird, decloaking off our port bow. They are demanding we prepare to be boarded for inspection of an unauthorized xenobiological specimen. Picard's jaw tightened. Somehow, impossibly, the Romulans already knew about Yoda. The question was, how? And what lengths would they go to acquire a being whose very existence defied the laws of known science? Yoda's ears swiveled toward the sound of the alert, his ancient eyes narrowing. Begin, the complications do. The bridge of the Enterprise-D had transformed into a theater of tension. On the viewscreen, the Romulan warbird hung in space like a predatory bird, its sleek design somehow managing to appear both elegant and menacing. The massive vessel dwarfed the Enterprise, its hull painted in the deep green-gray that marked vessels of the Romulan Star Empire. Picard stood at the center of his bridge, hands clasped behind his back, his face a mask of diplomatic neutrality that concealed deep concern. Beside him, Yoda had insisted on observing, his small form balanced on the edge of the command chair's armrest. Worf had objected strenuously to bringing their guest to the bridge during a potential combat situation, but something in Yoda's calm insistence had overridden standard protocols. On screen, Picard commanded. The warbird's commander materialized, a Romulan woman with the characteristic V-shaped forehead ridge, severe features, and eyes that calculated advantage with every glance. Her uniform bore the insignia of a sub-commander, but something in her bearing suggested connections far beyond military rank. Tal Shiar, almost certainly. I am Sub-Commander Vilek of the Warbird Validus. Captain Picard, our long-range sensors detected a subspace anomaly in this sector, followed by the appearance of an unidentified vessel and its subsequent destruction. Federation protocols require you to report any first contact scenarios that occur near the neutral zone. Yet you transmitted no such report. Picard's tone remained level, giving nothing away. Sub-Commander, the anomaly occurred well within Federation space. We are under no obligation to report our scientific findings to the Romulan Empire. Scientific findings. Vilek's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Is that what you call the xenobiological life form currently aboard your vessel? Our sensors detected unusual energy signatures during your transport operation. Energy signatures that do not match any known Federation technology or biology. Data's fingers moved silently across his console, running counter-sensor sweeps. He turned to Picard, his voice pitched low. Captain, the Romulan vessel should not have been able to detect transport operations at this range. Their sensors are far more sophisticated than standard warbird configurations. This suggests... Tal Shiar. Worf growled. They were already here. Waiting. Cloaked and watching. Yoda's ears twitched. His eyes closed, and for a moment, his breathing deepened into a meditative rhythm. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Deceive us, she does. But fear I sense. And hunger. Dangerous combination, that is. Picard kept his attention on the view screen. Sub-Commander, you seem remarkably well informed about events aboard a Federation starship. I could interpret such intelligence gathering as a violation of our treaty agreements. Treaties. Vilek's expression hardened. The Romulan Empire has legitimate security concerns when unknown entities appear near our borders. Entities that demonstrate abilities our analysis suggests are unprecedented. We demand the right to inspect this life form and determine whether it poses a threat to regional stability. Denied, Picard said flatly. Master Yoda is a refugee under Federation protection. He has demonstrated no hostile intent and poses no threat to anyone. Master Yoda? Vilek repeated the name, as if tasting it. An interesting designation. Our intelligence suggests this being possesses capabilities that defy known physics. Telekinetic manipulation. Precognitive awareness. Energy projection without technological interface. Such abilities in Romulan hands could be weaponized. Picard interrupted, his voice carrying an edge of controlled anger. Yes, I'm quite sure that's exactly what you're thinking. The answer is still no, Sub-Commander. The Enterprise will not surrender a sentient being to become a test subject for Romulan military research. On the view screen, Vilek's composure cracked slightly. You mistake our intentions, Captain. We seek only to understand. Understand you do not. Yoda suddenly spoke, his voice carrying surprising authority for such a small being. He rose, standing fully upright on the command chair, bringing his eyes nearly level with the view screen. What I am, what the Force is. Take this knowledge by force, you cannot. Imprison the wind, you might as well try. Vilek's eyes widened fractionally. For a moment, genuine shock crossed her features, not at Yoda's words, but at something else. You. I feel. Her hand moved to her temple, confusion warring with tactical discipline. What are you doing? Doing? Nothing I do. Yoda's tone remained calm. The Force you feel. Sensitive to it you are, though untrained. Rare such sensitivity is. Wasted on deception and schemes, it should not be. Troy suddenly gasped from her position at the counselor's station. Captain, I'm sensing something from the Romulan commander. It's like she's experiencing what I feel when I use my empathic abilities, but magnified. Confused. Almost frightened. In the depths of Yoda's meditation, he had reached out through the Force, still distant and strange in this universe, but present nonetheless. And in doing so, he had brushed against a mind that possessed latent sensitivity, the raw potential for Force awareness that existed in perhaps 1 in 10,000 beings across any galaxy. Vilek felt it as an intrusion, a violation, something utterly beyond her experience or training. Withdraw from my mind! Vilek's composure shattered completely. Tal's sheer conditioning should protect against telepathic intrusion. How are you? Telepathy, this is not, Yoda said gently, almost sadly. The Force it is. And a gift you have, though twisted by your culture it has become. See through deception you could. Sense truth and lies. Guide your people toward peace, such ability might. But fear it you do. Fear what you cannot control. Picard watched this exchange with growing concern. Whatever was happening between Yoda and the Romulan commander had moved beyond standard diplomatic protocols into territory he didn't fully understand. Master Yoda, perhaps we should. The tactical board suddenly screamed warnings. Worf's voice cut through the bridge. Captain? 2 more warbids decloaking. Flanking positions. They are powering weapons and raising shields. The view screen split into 3 sections, showing all 3 Romulan vessels. Vilek had regained her composure, but something in her eyes had changed, calculation mixed with what might have been genuine uncertainty. Captain Picard, you will transport the alien to our vessel immediately. This is not a request. Your shields are no match for 3 warbids. Your weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. Surrender the xenobiological specimen, or we will take it by force. Data's console lit up with tactical projections. Captain, she is correct. In a 3-on-1 engagement, our chances of survival are 12.3%. However, if we can reach the neutral zone boundary and transmit a distress call. No. Yoda's voice carried absolute certainty. He moved with surprising speed, hopping down from the command chair and walking toward the view screen. His walking stick tapped against the deck plating with each step, the sound somehow echoing louder than it should. Run, we will not. Fight, we need not. A third path, there always is. Master Yoda, Picard began. I appreciate your confidence, but... Yoda raised one hand, and the bridge lights dimmed slightly. Every officer felt it, a presence, vast and ancient, pressing against the edges of their perception. Troy's empathic senses nearly overwhelmed her. Data's positronic brain registered anomalous readings in every system. Even Worf, warrior trained and skeptical, felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. 3 ships you have, Yoda said, his words now directed at all 3 Romulan commanders visible on the split screen. Powerful, you believe yourselves. Superior technology. Superior tactics. But understand power, you do not. He closed his eyes, and the Enterprise shuddered. Not from weapons fire, from something far stranger. On the Romulan vessels, alarms began sounding. Tactical officers shouted reports to confused commanders. Their weapons systems, their shields, their cloaking devices, all functioning perfectly, yet every targeting lock on the Enterprise suddenly failed. Sensor feeds showed the Federation starship in 3 different positions simultaneously, as if space itself couldn't decide where it was. An illusion, Yoda said softly. The Force, it bends perception. Makes you see what you expect to see. Aim at shadows, you do, while the truth stands before you. Vilek's face contorted with rage and fear. This is impossible. Our sensors. Trust your sensors, you do. Trust your technology. But close your eyes, do you, to the deeper truths. Yoda's voice carried both rebuke and invitation. Feel, Subcommander Vilek. Use the gift you deny. Sense the truth beneath the lies your instruments tell you. On the Romulan bridge, Vilek did close her eyes. And in that moment of darkness, reaching with senses she had spent years suppressing through Tal Shiar conditioning, she felt it. The Force, vast and incomprehensible, flowing around her, through her, connecting every living thing in ways her culture had no framework to understand. And in that current of energy she sensed Yoda, not as a threat, not as a weapon, but as a teacher standing before students who had forgotten how to learn. She opened her eyes, and her voice, when she spoke, carried uncertainty for the first time. Stand down, she commanded her tactical officer. All ships hold position. Yoda released his concentration, and the sensor illusions faded. The Enterprise returned to its singular, actual position in space. The small Jedi Master swayed slightly, fatigue evident in his stance. In this universe, using the Force required far more effort than in his own galaxy. The distance he felt from the living Force meant every manipulation, every reach, drained him more quickly than it should. Picard moved to support Yoda, but the Jedi waved him off gently. Fine, I am. Tired, but fine. On the view screen, Vilek studied Yoda with new eyes. You could have destroyed our ships. Disabled them. Instead, you showed us we were blind. Why? Because power without wisdom, destructive it is. Because even enemies, students they can be. Because the Force teaches compassion, not conquest. Yoda's ancient eyes met hers across the vastness of space. Go, Sub-Commander. Report to your superiors what you have seen. Tell them that being aboard this ship seeks no conflict. But warn them also, pursue this, they should not. Some knowledge, earned it must be. Stolen, it cannot be. Vilek nodded slowly, something like respect flickering across her features. The Tal Shiar will not accept this report easily, Master Yoda. They will send others. More ships. More persuasive methods. Let them come. Ready I will be. And perhaps. His voice softened with something that might have been hope. Perhaps some, like you, will choose to feel rather than to fear. The Romulan warbirds cloaked one by one, their sensor signatures vanishing into the fabric of space. The Enterprise bridge crew remained silent for a long moment, each processing what they had witnessed. Finally, Dr. Crusher spoke from her station at the rear of the bridge. Master Yoda, my medical tricorder shows you're exhausted. That display of power, it took a significant toll. Yes. Yoda nodded, accepting the truth. Stronger, the Force was, in my galaxy. Here, reach farther I must, to touch it. Tires me more quickly. Adapt, I must learn to. Or vulnerable, I will be. Picard guided Yoda toward the turbolift. I think it's time we guide you to your quarters. And then, Master Yoda, we need to have a very serious discussion about what just happened here. As the turbolift doors closed, Yoda glanced up at the captain. Discuss, we will. But understand, even I do not. The Force in this universe, different it is. Quieter. Stranger. Learning I am, just as you are. Question is, learn together, will we? Or remain strangers, divided by what we cannot explain? The turbolift descended, carrying a Jedi Master into the heart of a starship built on principles of logic, science, and reason. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, Romulan intelligence was already transmitting reports that would reach the highest levels of the Tal Shiar. And in the depths of space, other powers were beginning to take notice. The Force had come to the Star Trek universe. And nothing would ever be quite the same. The USS Enterprise arrived at Vulcan 3 days after the Romulan encounter. Picard had transmitted a carefully worded report to Starfleet Command, detailing Yoda's arrival and capabilities while deliberately understating the philosophical implications. Within 12 hours, the Vulcan Science Academy had requested a cultural exchange delegation to meet with the telekinetic refugee from an alternate dimensional origin. Yoda stood in the Enterprise's observation lounge, watching Vulcan's rust-colored surface rotate beneath them. The planet's thin atmosphere caught the light of its sun, creating ribbons of amber and ochre across the horizon. His meditation had been troubled these past days. The Force here felt like trying to hear whispers through a wall, present but muffled, requiring intense concentration to touch. Master Yoda. Picard entered, followed by 3 Vulcan delegates. May I present Ambassador Sarek, Director T'Pring of the Vulcan Science Academy, and Master Tuvok, a specialist in mental disciplines. The Vulcans offered the traditional Tal salute, hands raised with fingers split in the Vulcan greeting. Yoda returned a small bow, leaning on his Jimmer stick. Fascinating, Sarek observed, his weathered features betraying no emotion. Your physiological scans suggest extreme longevity. 900 years, Captain Picard's report indicated? Give or take, yes, Yoda replied. Long life, my species has. Though alone now, I may be. T'Pring stepped forward, a tricorder in hand. We have analyzed the energy signatures you generate. They do not conform to any known physical laws. Yet you claim this force is a natural phenomenon in your galaxy of origin? Natural as breathing it is. Connects all living things. Surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. Yoda gestured to a nearby chair, and with the slightest focus, it slid across the floor toward him. The Vulcans observed with raised eyebrows, the closest they came to expressing surprise. Tuvok spoke, his voice measured. On Vulcan, we have developed extensive mental disciplines. Telepathy, mind melds, emotional control through logical frameworks. These abilities stem from our neurology and are scientifically documented. What you demonstrate appears similar, yet our sensors detect known neurological activity consistent with known psionic function. Different, the Force is. Not of the mind alone. Of life itself. Energy field created by all living beings. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Yoda tapped his walking stick against the deck. Vulcans, disciplined you are. Logical. Control emotion through will. Admirable, this is. But deny emotion you do. Suppress it. The Force, balance requires. Peace yet passion. Serenity yet emotion. Harmony yet conflict. Sarek's eyebrow climbed incrementally. You advocate for embracing emotion? Emotion is illogical. It clouds judgment, leads to violence and chaos. Vulcan's history proved this. We nearly destroyed ourselves before Sarek taught us the way of logic. Destroyed yourselves, you nearly did, yes. But through denial of emotion, or through surrender to it. Yoda's eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom. Balance Sarek sought. Interpreted as suppression, his teaching was. But feel I do, great emotion in each of you. Hidden, controlled, but present still. T'Pring's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her tricorder. Our emotions are controlled through meditation and logical frameworks. This is not suppression but mastery. Show you, may I, the difference? Yoda asked gently. Tuvok nodded. I would be interested in a comparative analysis of our meditation techniques. They sat across from each other, Yoda on his customized chair, Tuvok in standard Vulcan meditation posture. Picard watched from the observation window, fascinated by this meeting of philosophies. Clear your mind you do, yes? Yoda asked. Correct. We eliminate emotional interference to achieve pure logical thought. Eliminate. Yoda's ears lowered. Interesting word choice. Try this instead. Acknowledge. Feel the emotion. Name it. Accept it. Then, let it flow through you like water. Not dam the river. Become the river. Tuvok closed his eyes, following the Jedi meditation techniques. For a moment, his controlled expression flickered. Decades of suppressed feelings. Grief for fallen comrades, frustration with the logic, even joy at discoveries made, rose to the surface. Not overwhelming, but acknowledged. Present. Real. His eyes opened, and for the first time in decades, a Vulcan experienced emotion without the rigid framework of logic to contain it. The sensation was unsettling, yet clarifying. I felt. Tuvok paused, searching for words. I felt my emotions as data points, but also as truth. They did not control me, yet I did not deny them. Fascinating. Sarek stepped forward, his interest now clearly piqued despite his emotional control. Your philosophy suggests that emotion and reason can coexist without logic as the supreme governing principle? Coexist? Must coexist. Yoda rose, pacing slowly. The Force, two sides it has. Light and dark. Passion leads to the dark side, yes, if uncontrolled. But passion also drives justice, compassion, love. Deny all passion, and deny life itself you do. The Jedi way, feel deeply, but act with wisdom. Not logic alone. Not emotion alone. Balance. To bring us scientific mind engaged fully. If we accept your premise that this force exists and responds to emotional states, how do you prevent descent into chaos? How do you ensure individuals do not act on destructive impulses? Training. Discipline. Understanding. Yoda's voice grew grave. Failed at this, the Jedi did, in the end. Too rigid we became. Too certain of our rightness. Suppressed our own doubts, our own fears. And when darkness came, blind we were. Destroyed we were. The room fell silent. Picard recognized the weight of confession in Yoda's words, the admission of catastrophic failure. Sarek spoke carefully. You claim your order failed because of rigidity, yet you criticize Vulcan logic for similar reasons. An interesting parallel. See it, do you? Yoda's eyes met Sarek's. Wisdom in your logic there is. Structure. Discipline. But incomplete it is. As incomplete as Jedi teachings were. The Force teaches, always in motion the future is. Always learning we must be. Fixed in our ways, we cannot become. Tuvok stood, his hands clasped behind his back. Master Yoda, would you consent to a mind meld? It is a Vulcan technique that allows direct mental contact. If your force truly connects living things, perhaps through this connection we could understand each other more completely. Yoda hesitated. In his galaxy, such intimate mental contact was reserved for the most trusted. Here, alone and isolated from other Force sensitives, the opportunity to truly connect with another mind was tempting. Yet dangerous. Dangerous, mind melds can be. Show you the Force I might. But see into me you would. See my failures. My doubts. My grief. I would share my own in return. Tuvok said simply. Knowledge requires vulnerability. Picard intervened. Master Yoda, you're under no obligation. No. Yoda raised a hand. Right, he is. Trust begins with risk. Proceed we shall. Tuvok approached, kneeling to bring himself to Yoda's height. His fingers touched Yoda's face in the traditional meld positions. My mind to your mind. My thoughts to your thoughts. The connection blazed into existence. Tuvok felt the Force as Yoda experienced it, a vast ocean of living energy, connecting every being, every star, every atom of existence. In his own galaxy it sang. Here it whispered. But present, always present. And Yoda felt Vulcan logic. The disciplined clarity, the suppressed emotions not destroyed but controlled with iron will. He felt Tuvok's grief at the loss of his daughter, acknowledged but never processed. Pain held in perfect stasis by logic's framework. Let it go, Yoda whispered through the connection. Grieve. Feel. The pain will pass, but only if you allow it to flow. In that moment, Tuvok did something no Vulcan had done in his presence. He wept. One tear, then another, sliding down his controlled features. And as he wept, Yoda felt the Force surge slightly stronger, as if the acknowledgement of genuine emotion in this universe strengthened the connection. They separated. Tuvok stood, composing himself with visible effort. I apologize. That was not logical. Logical or not, necessary it was. Healing begins with honesty. Yoda smiled sadly. Thank you, Tuvok. Reminded me, you have, that alone I am not. Different we may be, but connected still. Through the Force, through compassion, through shared pain. Sarek observed this exchange with new understanding. Master Yoda, the Vulcan Science Academy would like to propose an extended cultural exchange. Your philosophies challenge ours in ways that may prove instructive. And perhaps, Pring added, we can help you understand how the Force functions in this universe. Collaborative research, combining your experiential knowledge with our scientific methodology. Yoda nodded slowly. Value in this, I see. But warn you, I must seek me, others will. The Romulans, only the first they were. Powerful, the Force makes beings. Desired by those who seek power, I will be. Picard's comm badge chirped. Bridge to Captain. Sir, we're receiving a Priority 1 message from Starfleet Command. It's flagged for your eyes only. On my way. Master Yoda, Ambassador Sarek, please excuse me. As Picard left, Yoda turned back to the Vulcans. Continue, shall we? Much to learn from each other, we have. And time, perhaps shorter than we think it is. Outside the observation lounge window, stars wheeled in their eternal dance. And somewhere in that vast darkness, entities far older than Starfleet, far stranger than Romulans, were beginning to sense the disturbance Yoda's presence created in the fabric of reality itself. The message from Starfleet Command had been brief and classified. Monitor situation. Expect contact from specialized personnel. Command out. Picard knew what that meant. Section 31. 2 days after leaving Vulcan, the Enterprise detected a small courier ship on an intercept course. No transponder code. No registry. The kind of vessel that didn't officially exist in Starfleet databases. When it docked with the Enterprise's shuttle bay, a single passenger disembarked. A human woman in nondescript civilian clothing, carrying herself with the coiled readiness of someone accustomed to operating in shadows. Captain Picard? She offered no hand to shake. I'm Agent Keller. I'm here about your passenger. Section 31. Picard's distaste was evident. The clandestine organization operated outside Federation law, claiming to protect the Federation through methods Starfleet officially condemned. I should have known you'd take an interest. A being with unexplainable abilities appearing near Romulan space. Of course we're interested. Keller's eyes were cold, calculating. We've analyzed every sensor log from your encounter with the warbids. This Yoda created sensor illusions across 3 ships simultaneously. He detected Romulan agents you couldn't. He has abilities that could revolutionize intelligence operations, military tactics, even diplomacy. The Federation needs to understand what he is. He is a refugee and a guest, Picard said firmly. Not a resource to be exploited. Noble sentiment. But while you're protecting his rights, the Tal Shiar is mobilizing. We've intercepted communications indicating they're assembling a task force. And they're not the only ones interested. Keller pulled up a holographic display. Intercepts from Cardassian intelligence. Encrypted messages from a Ferengi consortium offering substantial latinum for acquisition services. Even chatter from the Orion Syndicate. Your Master Yoda has become the most sought-after individual in 3 sectors. In his quarters, Yoda meditated, but the Force brought him no peace. He felt the web of attention focusing on him, greed, fear, ambition. Like ripples spreading from a stone cast into still water, his presence was creating disturbances he couldn't fully perceive in this muted Force space. The door chimed. "Enter," Yoda called. Data stepped inside, carrying a PADD. "Master Yoda, I have completed my analysis of your energy signatures. The results are perplexing. Perplexing truth often is." Yoda gestured to a chair. "Share your findings, you may. Your cellular structures contain organisms you call midichlorians. They generate measurable bioelectric fields, but the energy you manipulate exceeds their output by 17 orders of magnitude. Additionally, when you use the Force, I detect quantum-level fluctuations suggesting you are somehow accessing zero-point energy from subspace itself. But the mechanism remains inexplicable. Explain the Force with numbers you seek. But mathematics alone, insufficient it is. The Force, alive it is. Conscious in its way. Responds to will, to emotion, to connection. Not a tool to be measured. A relationship to be lived." Data's head tilted. "I find that concept difficult to process. As an android, I have no connection to this Force. I detect its effects but cannot experience it directly. This troubles me." "Troubles you? Why?" "Because," Data said carefully, "if the Force connects all living things, and I cannot feel it, perhaps I am not truly alive. Merely sophisticated programming simulating life." Yoda's ears rose with sudden attention. He studied Data with new intensity, then reached out with the Force. Where he expected emptiness, an android's mechanical void, he found something else. Not life as he understood it, but something. Pattern. Purpose. A kind of ordered complexity that resonated differently than biological consciousness, yet resonated nonetheless. Alive you are, Data. Different your life is. Not carbon and midichlorians. Silicon and positronics. But the Force patterns it follows. Order emerging from chaos. Purpose emerging from randomness. In you, such patterns I feel. Unique they are. Beautiful in their way. Data's expression, always controlled, always learning to approximate human reaction, showed something that might have been wonder. "You can sense me through the Force?" "Sense something I can. Not as I sense Captain Picard or Counselor Troy. But present you are, in the Force. As a river shapes stone, or stone shapes river, interaction creates presence. Alive you are, Data. Doubt this you should not." Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by red alert. Picard's voice came through the comm system. "Senior staff to the bridge. Immediately." The bridge was tense when Yoda and Data arrived. On the view screen, a Romulan vessel approached, but not a warbird. Something smaller, sleeker. Built for speed and stealth. "Tal Shiar scout ship," Worf reported. "They are hailing us." On screen, the face that appeared was not Vilek. This Romulan was male, older, with scars across his features that suggested extensive combat experience. His voice carried absolute certainty. "Captain Picard? I am Tomalak, Special Operative of the Tal Shiar. You harbor an asset critical to Romulan security interests. Transfer the alien immediately, or we will interpret your refusal as an act of war. The Romulan Empire has no legal claim to Master Yoda," Picard replied. "He arrived in Federation space and has requested asylum. Your threats are empty posturing." "Are they?" Tomalak's smile was predatory. "Our intelligence indicates the alien's abilities have limitations in this universe. He exhausts quickly. Requires extended meditation to recover strength." "How long can he protect your ship, Captain? How many vessels can he face before his unique powers fail him entirely?" Yoda stepped forward. "Speak of me as if absent you do. Rude this is." Tomalak's eyes fixed on the small Jedi. "Master Yoda, the Tal Shiar offers you a proposition. Teach us your abilities. Share your knowledge. In return, we provide protection, resources, a chance to rebuild what you lost. The Romulan Empire has use for a warrior of your caliber. A warrior. Yoda's voice carried disappointment. See only violence you do. Power to be controlled. But the Force, more than weapon it is. And teach the Tal Shiar I will not. Twist my teachings you would. Use them for oppression, for conquest. This path, to the dark side it leads. Dark side? Tomalak laughed. Moral absolutism from an alien who demonstrates abilities we can barely comprehend? You speak of light and darkness while we speak of survival. The Federation's philosophy has made them soft, Yoda. But the Romulan Empire understands that power must be used to survive. Survive? Or dominate? Yoda's eyes narrowed. See the difference, can you not? Agent Keller had appeared on the bridge, her presence ignored by the Romulans but not by Picard. She whispered urgently to him. Captain, our intelligence suggests this Tomalak is authorized to use lethal force. 3 more Romulan vessels are en route. This isn't a negotiation. It's a delay tactic. Picard made his decision. Mr. Worf, shields up. Helm, set course for Starbase 234, maximum warp. Master Yoda, I suggest you prepare yourself. This is about to become very complicated. Complicated, it already is. Yoda closed his eyes, reaching into the Force. Even muted and distant, he felt the approaching ships. Felt the hostile intentions. Felt something else, too, a presence watching from far away. Not Romulan. Not Federation. Something else entirely. Tomalak's image on the viewscreen smiled. Running, Captain? How very Starfleet of you. But you cannot outrun what is coming. Every power in this sector wants what you have. And they will tear your precious ship apart to get it. The transmission cut. 3 Romulan warbids decloaked in perfect attack formation. Incoming fire. Worf's warning came as disruptor beams lanced through space. The Enterprise's shields flared, absorbing the first barrage. But Yoda felt it, the ship's pain, translated through the Force into something he could perceive. Metal screaming under energy bombardment. Lives aboard, afraid but determined. Captain, Yoda said quietly. Fight them you can. Or flee you can. But a third option there is. Speak with them I will. Alone. Absolutely not, Picard said. I will not hand you over to the Tal Shiar. Hand me over? No. Yoda's smile was enigmatic. But a lesson in humility they need. Teach them, perhaps I should, what power truly means. Before Picard could object, Yoda closed his eyes. The Force, distant and difficult as it was, still answered. On the bridge of all 3 Romulan warbids, lights flickered. Weapon systems locked up for crucial seconds. Commanders felt invisible pressure on their minds, not control, but presence. A reminder that their vaunted technology, their military might, was nothing compared to forces they could neither measure nor understand. A warning this is. Yoda's voice somehow transmitted across all channels, carried not by technology but by the Force itself pressing against minds. Pursue this path, and learn you will. Some knowledge earned it must be. Stolen it cannot be. Harm this ship, and consequences there will be. The Romulan vessels held position, commanders too shaken to fire. And in that moment of hesitation, the Enterprise jumped to warp, leaving the Romulans behind. But Yoda knew, this was only the beginning. The attention he'd drawn would not fade. It would intensify. And sooner or later, he would face beings far more dangerous than ambitious Romulans seeking weapons. The Enterprise had been at warp for 6 hours when reality fractured. There was no warning, no sensor alert, no gradual buildup of energy. One moment, the starship cruised through normal space at warp 7. The next, the universe simply changed. Every instrument on the bridge went haywire. Stars visible through the viewscreen multiplied into kaleidoscopic patterns, then vanished entirely, replaced by an endless white void. The warp engines died. Life support fluctuated. And standing in the center of the bridge, where nothing had been a millisecond before, was a figure in an immaculate Starfleet captain's uniform. Except it wasn't a captain. It was Q. "Oh, this is delicious!" Q's voice rang with theatrical delight as he examined Yoda with unconcealed fascination. "A genuine space wizard! How positively medieval! Tell me, do you grant wishes? Turn princes into frogs? I've always wanted to meet a fairy godmother." Picard was on his feet immediately, jaw tight with barely controlled frustration. "Q, I should have known you'd involve yourself in this. Mon Capitaine! Always so suspicious. Can't an omnipotent being simply drop by to satisfy his curiosity?" Q circled Yoda, who remained seated in the command chair, utterly calm despite the chaos. "Besides, I've been watching your little drama with the Romulans. Quite entertaining, but ultimately disappointing. They think far too small. So I thought I'd provide a more suitable challenge." Yoda's eyes tracked Q's movement, his connection to the Force suddenly sharp and clear. The muffled distance he'd felt since arriving in this universe vanished, replaced by crystalline clarity. Because Q wasn't just in the universe, Q was beyond it, outside it, touching dimensions that the Force itself flowed through. "Omnipotent you claim to be," Yoda said calmly. "Test me, you wish to. Why?" Q stopped circling, genuine interest flickering across his features. "Because, my diminutive green friend, you are an anomaly. You use powers that shouldn't exist here. Powers that operate on principles my dear Continuum finds intriguing. We've watched this universe evolve for eons. We've seen telepaths, energy beings, even incorporeal consciousness. But you're something different. You touch something we don't fully control. The Q continuum doesn't control everything?" Riker's skepticism was evident. "Oh, we control matter, energy, time, space, all the boring physical stuff." Q waved dismissively. "But this Force our guest keeps mentioning? It's like finding a color we've never seen before." Naturally, I had to investigate. Troy had been silent, her empathic senses overwhelmed by Q's presence. But now she spoke, voice strained. "Master Yoda, I can sense him more clearly now. Whatever Q is doing, it's amplifying your connection to the Force." "Yes." Q snapped his fingers. "Very perceptive, counselor. I've temporarily adjusted the dimensional frequencies of this region to match his home universe more closely. Think of it as tuning a radio to the right station. Now Master Yoda can access his full power. Which brings me to my proposition." Yoda stood, and the change in him was immediately apparent. His posture straightened, fatigue vanishing. The Force sang through him as it once had in his own galaxy, vibrant, alive, responsive. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he felt complete. "A test you offer," Yoda said. "Power against power. Prove my worth you wish me to." "Exactly. You see, the Continuum has been debating whether your Force is truly significant, or just parlor tricks dressed up with mystical nonsense. I propose a simple challenge: match your abilities against mine. If you succeed, I'll personally ensure no one in this quadrant bothers you again. If you fail..." Q's smile turned predatory. "Well, let's just say the Romulans will seem charming by comparison." Picard stepped between them. "Q, Master Yoda is a guest aboard this vessel. I will not allow you to use him for your amusement." "Allow?" Q laughed. "Oh, Picard. Still thinking you have a choice. But very well, Master Yoda can decline. Of course, if he does, I'll be forced to conclude the Force is nothing special. And I might let slip to certain interested parties exactly how to disrupt his powers permanently. The Borg, for instance, would find that information quite valuable." Data's positronic brain processed this at lightning speed. Q is leveraging a false dilemma. However, the threat to share information about Master Yoda's vulnerabilities is credible given past behavior patterns. Yoda raised a hand, silencing further objections. "Accept your challenge, I will, Q. Not to prove the Force to you. Not for protection or favor. But because understand I must, what you are. Beyond this universe you stand. Like the Force itself, yet different. Curious I am. Q clapped delightedly. Wonderful! I knew you'd be more interesting than the usual mortals. Very well, let's begin with something simple. He gestured, and the bridge vanished. They stood in an endless void, not empty space, but absolute nothingness. Only the Enterprise crew and Yoda remained, floating on an invisible platform. Above them, below them, around them, nothing. Create, Q commanded. Show me what your Force can do when properly tuned. Yoda closed his eyes, reaching into the Force with his full strength for the first time in weeks. He felt it respond instantly, powerfully. He extended his hand, and in the void, light appeared. Not harsh technological illumination, but the warm glow of life itself. Trees materialized, massive, ancient, their roots digging into ground that formed beneath them. Water flowed, creating streams and pools. The air filled with the sounds of living things. In seconds, Yoda had created a forest, impossibly alive in this void of Q's making. Q stroked his beard thoughtfully. Impressive. Pulling matter from quantum foam, arranging it at the molecular level, infusing it with energy patterns that simulate life. Very creative use of zero-point manipulation. But can you match this? He snapped his fingers. The forest exploded into 1,000 different versions of itself, winter and summer, day and night, thriving and dying, all existing simultaneously in impossible superposition. Reality is flexible, Q said. Show me you understand that. Yoda did not try to match Q's display. Instead, he drew the Force inward, concentrated it, and touched something deeper than reality's surface. The chaotic forest stilled, then began to move in perfect harmony. Every version synchronized, creating not contradiction but symphony, all states existing not in conflict but in balance. Understand reality, perhaps you do not, Yoda said softly. Change it constantly, you do. But the Force seeks balance. Harmony. Not chaos, but pattern. Not control, but flow. For the first time, Q's expression showed something other than amusement. Respect, perhaps? Or recognition. Interesting philosophy. But philosophy is cheap. Let's test something more concrete, the nature of consciousness itself. Q gestured at Data. Your android friend believes himself alive because you sensed him in the Force. Prove it. Show me the difference between true consciousness and sophisticated programming. Yoda approached Data, placing one small hand on the android's arm. Through the Force, he let everyone present feel what he felt, the unique pattern of Data's existence. Not biological life, but something equally valid. Purpose. Growth. The capacity for choice. Alive he is, Yoda said with absolute certainty. Different from you or I, but alive nonetheless. The Force confirms this. Not because I wish it. Because it is truth. Q studied Data with new eyes, then looked at Yoda with grudging admiration. You actually believe that? And through your Force, you've convinced yourself it's objectively true. But what if I told you the Force itself is just another form of self-deception? Energy fields created by life, yes, but ultimately meaningless. No grand design. No cosmic purpose. Just particles in motion, briefly fooling themselves into thinking they matter. Then wrong you would be. Yoda's voice carried absolute calm. Meaning imposed it is not. Discovered it is. The Force does not create purpose. Reveals it, the Force does. And purpose, found everywhere it can be. In android and human. In Vulcan and Romulan. In all beings who choose, who grow, who connect. The void shimmered. They were back on the Enterprise bridge, everything restored to normal. Q sat in Picard's command chair, looking thoughtful. You've surprised me, Yoda. The Continuum expected a warrior wielding exotic powers. Instead, we found a philosopher who wields wisdom. Far more dangerous that. He stood, straightening his uniform. Very well. I'll keep my word. No one will harm you on my watch. But understand, you've caught the attention of beings far beyond Romulans or even the Borg. The Continuum will be watching. Watch you may. Learn you might. Even omnipotent beings, students they can be. Q laughed genuinely. Oh, I like you. Very well, Master Yoda. Perhaps we'll speak again when you're ready for the advanced lessons. He vanished with a flash. The bridge crew slowly exhaled. Picard moved to Yoda, who had already returned to normal size, the force connection dimming back to its usual muted state. Are you all right? Tired again, I am. But learned something I have. The force, weaker here it is. But not absent. And beings like you, touch the same energies they do, from different angle. Connected all things are. Even omnipotence. Worf's tactical console beeped urgently. Captain, sensors are detecting a massive spatial disturbance. Dead ahead. On the view screen, space itself was tearing open, a geometric pattern of impossible angles, bleeding green light. And through that opening, ships were emerging. Cube-shaped vessels. The Borg had arrived. The Borg cube dominated the view screen, a massive geometric nightmare of gray-green metal and pulsing technology. Smaller than the cubes that had devastated Starfleet at Wolf 359, but still impossibly vast compared to the Enterprise. The vessel hung motionless in space, its presence a violation of everything organic and individual. 3.2 kilometers per side, Data reported, his voice maintaining professional calm despite the existential threat before them. Standard Borg configuration. Sensors detect approximately 8,000 drones aboard. Picard stood rigid, one hand gripping his command chair. The memories flooded back unbidden, assimilation, the collective's voice drowning his identity, becoming locutus. His jaw tightened. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Shields to maximum. The transmission came immediately, that terrible unified voice that spoke as one. We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. But the message continued, and its next words changed everything. The individual designated Yoda possesses unique biological characteristics. Telepathic abilities without technological interface. Energy manipulation exceeding known parameters. The collective requires this distinctiveness. Prepare for assimilation. Yoda had been standing near the view screen, studying the cube with the Force. What he felt made his ancient heart heavy with sorrow. Thousands of minds screaming silently, their individuality crushed beneath the weight of the collective consciousness. Not evil, the Borg were beyond such concepts, but tragic. Life twisted into something that mimicked death. Feel them, I do, Yoda said softly. So many voices crying out. Trapped. The Force connects all living things, but the Borg, connection without consent they create. Unity without harmony. The dark reflection of what the Force should be. Troy's empathic senses were already overwhelmed. I can't, there are too many minds. All thinking the same thoughts. It's like drowning in static. Counselor, get to sickbay, Picard ordered. Then to Yoda. Master Yoda, the Borg adapt to every weapon we use against them. They assimilate technology, biology, even tactical strategies. If they capture you, assimilate the Force, can they? Yoda's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Interesting question. But risk finding out, we should not. Worf's console erupted with warnings. Captain, they're locking a tractor beam on us. Attempting to compensate, negative. We're being pulled toward the cube. Full reverse thrusters. Rotate shield frequencies. Picard's commands came rapid fire, muscle memory from too many Borg encounters. Target their tractor beam emitters. Fire! Phasers lanced out, striking the cube's surface. Explosions blossomed and died in the vacuum. The tractor beam flickered but held. Shields holding at 87%, Worf reported. But they're adapting to our phaser frequencies. Next volley will be 30% less effective. Data turned from his console. Captain, at current rate of approach, we will be within transporter range in 4 minutes 20 seconds. The Borg will begin boarding operations immediately. Yoda moved to the center of the bridge, his small frame radiating sudden determination. Captain Picard, release the tractor beam. I can. How? The Borg have adapted to every countermeasure we. Technology you use. The Force I will use. Different these are. Adapt to what they cannot detect, the Borg cannot. Picard made the decision in seconds. Do it. All hands brace for possible. Yoda closed his eyes. The Force, still muted in this universe but amplified by his recent encounter with Q, flowed through him. He reached out, not toward the tractor beam's technology, but toward the energy itself. The Force could manipulate matter and energy at fundamental levels. The tractor beam was just focused gravitons, particles the Force could touch. On the cube, systems registered something impossible. The tractor beam's coherence destabilized not from external interference, but from within. Graviton particles scattered, broke formation, dissolved. The beam collapsed. Tractor beam released! Worf's surprise was evident. Captain, their sensors show no indication of what caused the failure. Helm, evasive maneuvers. Pattern Delta 7. Picard watched as the Enterprise broke free, putting distance between them and the cube. But he knew it was temporary. The Borg didn't give up. The cube turned, impossibly agile for its size. A green cutting beam lanced out, slamming into the Enterprise's shields. Power fluctuated across the ship. Shields at 60%. Worf announced. They're modulating the cutting beam frequency. Attempting to compensate. Yoda could feel it, the collective's attention focusing on him specifically. 8,000 minds, thinking as one, analyzing the anomaly he represented. They had encountered telepaths before, assimilated them. Energy manipulators, assimilated. But the Force was different. It operated on principles their cybernetic minds couldn't catalog. Which meant they would dissect him to understand it. Captain, Yoda said quietly. Board their ship, I must. The bridge went silent. Riker turned incredulous. You can't be serious. That's suicide. Suicide, perhaps. But necessary it may be. The Borg, adapt to technology they do. But the Force, technology it is not. Disrupt them from within, I can. Give you time to escape. Absolutely not. Picard said firmly. I will not send you into the heart of a Borg cube alone. It goes against everything Starfleet stands for. Your choice, it is not. Yoda's voice carried gentle finality. My choice. My responsibility. Brought danger to your ship, I have. Resolve it, I must. Data spoke up, his analytical mind already processing the strategy. Captain, Master Yoda's proposal has tactical merit. The Borg's primary weakness is their reliance on networked consciousness. An individual with abilities they cannot assimilate, operating within their vessel, could create sufficient chaos to. Another impact. Shields down to 40%. The cube was methodically breaking down their defenses. Captain? Agent Keller, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. Section 31 protocols suggest. I don't care what Section 31 suggests, Picard snapped. Then, more quietly to Yoda. If you do this, you do it with support. I'm sending a security team with you. Slow me down, they would. Assimilated, they would be. Alone I must go. Yoda began walking toward the turbolift. Besides, alone I will not truly be. The Force, with me it is. Always. Picard followed him to the turbolift. Master Yoda, I've faced the Borg. I know what they're capable of. Once you're on that ship, I can help you. Help me you can. Survive you must. Remember what learned you have. Teach others. The Force, limited to one galaxy it is not. Perhaps here, in your universe, new students it will find. The turbolift doors closed. As Yoda descended toward the transporter room, he meditated on what awaited. The Borg represented the ultimate perversion of unity, forced connection, individuality destroyed. The opposite of what the Force taught. He would face them not with anger, but with compassion. They were victims as much as threats. In the transporter room, Chief O'Brien had his orders. Master Yoda, I'm beaming you to a junction corridor deep in the cube. It's as close as I can get you to their central plexus without materializing inside solid matter. Sufficient, that is. Yoda stepped onto the pad. When disruption I cause, ready to beam me back, B. Quickly, you must act. I'll be monitoring your comm badge signal. The moment you tag it, I'll lock on. O'Brien's hands moved across the console. Master Yoda, good luck. Luck? Yoda smiled faintly. No such thing as luck. Only the Force there is. The transporter beam took him, and Yoda felt the familiar dissolution of matter, the brief moment of quantum uncertainty, then reformation aboard a ship of nightmares. The Borg cube's interior was a cathedral of technology. Conduits ran everywhere, green light pulsed through walls of circuitry, and drones moved with mechanical precision, barely acknowledging his presence. The air smelled of ozone and something organic gone wrong. 2 drones turned toward him. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. Yoda ignited his lightsaber. The green blade hummed to life, its light cutting through the cube's gloom. Resist I will. And futile, you will find, attempting to assimilate what you cannot comprehend. The drones advanced. Yoda moved. For 900 years he had trained Jedi. For centuries, he had fought in defense of peace. His small form became a blur of motion, the lightsaber singing through the air. Drones fell, their mechanical limbs severed, their connection to the collective disrupted. But there were thousands more. And they were adapting. Yoda felt the collective's attention focused entirely on him. 8,000 minds analyzing every movement, every technique, searching for patterns to counter. He reached deeper into the Force, letting it guide his movements into unpredictability. The future was always in motion. The Borg could not adapt to what even he did not know he would do next. He ran deeper into the cube, toward the central plexus where the collective's processing nodes concentrated. Drones pursued, but he was faster. The Force enhanced his speed, his jumps carrying him across impossible distances. And then he reached it, the heart of the cube. A massive chamber where thousands of drones stood in regeneration alcoves, connected to the collective's central consciousness. The Queen was not present, but her influence permeated everything. Yoda stood at the center and closed his eyes. Forgive me, he whispered to the Force. But necessary this is. He released all restraint. The Force exploded outward from him like a shockwave, not violent, but overwhelming. It touched every mind in the cube simultaneously, forcing individuality where there should be none. For one impossible moment, 8,000 drones remembered who they had been before assimilation. The collective screamed. The Borg cube convulsed. Throughout the massive vessel, drones staggered, their mechanical precision dissolving into chaos. Regeneration alcoves sparked and failed. Processing nodes overloaded as 8,000 individualized thoughts crashed against the collective's hive mind architecture. Aboard the Enterprise, data's sensors registered the impossible. Captain, I am detecting massive system failures throughout the Borg vessel. Power fluctuations in 73% of their systems. Their structural integrity field is destabilizing. Picard gripped his command chair. Can you get a lock on Master Yoda's comm badge? O'Brien's voice came through the comm. Trying, sir. There's massive interference from— Wait, I've got him. He's in the central plexus, but his life signs are— A pause. Captain, he's barely conscious. Whatever he did, it's draining him fast. Beam him back. Now. Can't get a clean lock. The cube shields are still partially functional, and they're fluctuating wildly. I need 30 seconds of stable readings. Inside the cube, Yoda knelt on the deck plating, his small form trembling with exhaustion. Forcing individuality on thousands of Borg minds simultaneously had pushed him beyond his limits. In his own galaxy, with the Force flowing strong and clear, such an effort would have been difficult but manageable. Here, where the Force felt distant and muted, it had nearly killed him. But it had worked. Around him, drones stood motionless, their faces, some human, some alien, flickering between blank mechanical expression and confused awareness. Some were weeping. Others stared at their cybernetic limbs in horror, remembering what they had lost. One drone, a young human woman with Borg implants covering half her face, stumbled toward him. I remember. I was 7 of 9. No. Annika Hansen. I was studying. The collective came. My parents. Her voice broke. What have I done? What have I become? Victim you are, Yoda said gently, even as his strength failed. Not guilty. Not responsible. Freed now you are. Choose your own path you can. But the freedom was temporary. Yoda felt it already, the collective reasserting control, adapting to his forced disruption. The Borg Queen, somewhere in the vast network connecting all cubes across the galaxy, was analyzing what had happened. Adaptation protocols were being distributed. The woman designated 7 of 9 screamed as the collective's voice crashed back into her mind. We are Borg. We are Borg. We are. Her individual consciousness drowned beneath the flood of collective thought. All around the chamber, drones snapped back to rigid attention. But something had changed. Their movements were slightly less coordinated. Some hesitated fractionally before following commands. The collective had been wounded in a way it had never experienced before. Yoda felt the cube's attention focus on him with renewed intensity. A voice echoed through the chamber, not from any drone, but from the ship itself. Biological specimen Yoda. You have disrupted collective harmony. Your abilities cannot be assimilated through standard procedures. Alternative methods will be employed. Resistance remains futile. Deck plating opened. Mechanical arms emerged, tipped with assimilation tubules and restraint fields. Yoda raised his lightsaber weakly, but his strength was nearly gone. The Force still answered his call, but sluggishly, like moving through deep water. O'Brien! Picard's voice was urgent on the bridge. Status! Almost there, Captain. The shields are cycling. I just got it. The transporter beam caught Yoda just as the mechanical arms closed around empty space. He materialized on the Enterprise transporter pad, collapsing immediately. Dr. Crusher was already there, medical tricorder in hand. Get him to sickbay. Now! She helped the medical team lift Yoda onto an anti-grav stretcher. His cellular structure is in shock. Those midichlorians in his bloodstream, they're barely generating any energy. It's like his entire biology is shutting down. On the bridge, the tactical situation had changed. The cube was no longer pursuing. It hung in space, systems flickering erratically, but something new was happening. The vessel was sending a transmission. Not to the Enterprise, but outward, to the collective itself. Data intercepted and translated the Borg machine language. Captain, they are transmitting analysis of Master Yoda's abilities to the entire collective. They are designating the Force as Species Adaptation Protocol Omega-7. They are developing countermeasures. How long before they adapt completely? Riker asked. Unknown. However, based on the data they gathered, the Borg now recognize Force abilities as a threat requiring special protocols. Master Yoda has achieved something remarkable. He has forced the collective to acknowledge that some forms of power cannot be easily assimilated. Picard stood. Helm, set course for Starbase 234, maximum warp. We need medical facilities better than what we have aboard ship. Worf, continue a scan for additional Borg vessels. Sir, the cube is not pursuing. Worf reported. It appears to be regenerating. Repairing damage to its systems. Agent Keller approached Picard quietly. Captain, Section 31 needs a full report on what happened inside that cube. If Master Yoda has discovered a weapon against the Borg, he is not a weapon, Picard said coldly. And if Section 31 thinks they can exploit him the way the Borg tried to assimilate him, you're welcome to try. But you'll have to go through me first. In sickbay, Yoda lay on a biobed, his vital signs slowly stabilizing. Dr. Crusher had administered a combination of stimulants and cellular regeneration treatments, but the real problem was beyond Federation medicine. His connection to this force, it's like a muscle he overexerted, Crusher explained to Picard when he arrived. In his own galaxy, it would recover naturally. Here, where the force is apparently weaker, his body can't restore itself as quickly. He needs rest. Weeks, possibly months. Yoda's eyes opened. Months I do not have. Feel it I do. The Borg share what they learned they will. Others come looking they will. Not just Borg. Worse things, perhaps. Then we protect you, Picard said firmly. The Federation has facilities. Prison, you mean? Kind prison, yes. Comfortable. But prison nonetheless. Yoda tried to sit up, failed, settled back. The Prime Directive, Picard, tell me of it. The shift in topic surprised Picard. The Prime Directive is Starfleet's most important principle. We do not interfere with the natural development of pre-warp civilizations. We observe, but we do not act. Non-interference. Noble principle. Yoda's eyes found Picard's. But questioned it, have you? Times when the right thing, interfering would be? Picard's jaw tightened. He had indeed questioned it. The Mintakans. The Borlins. Situations where adherence to the Prime Directive meant watching innocents die. Yes. I've questioned it. But without such principles, we become conquerors, imposing our will on others. The line between help and domination becomes blurred. Wise words. But incomplete. Yoda gestured weakly toward the window, where stars streaked past at warp speed. The Jedi, similar principle we had. Avoid attachment. Remain detached observers of the galaxy's conflicts. Interfere only when the Force wills it. Thought ourselves wise, we did. Above the messy complications of politics and emotion. What happened? Picard asked, though he suspected he knew. Blind we became. So focused on our principles, we forgot compassion. So detached from attachments, we failed to see how attachment drives beings to greatness and sacrifice. The Force showed us the future, but interpret it correctly, we could not. And destroyed we were by our own rigidity. Dr. Crusher checked her medical monitors. Master Yoda, you need to rest. This philosophical discussion can wait. No. Wait, it cannot. Yoda's voice carried urgency despite his weakness. Soon, Captain, a choice you will face. A pre-warp civilization in danger. The Prime Directive says watch and do nothing. But the Force, it shows me, doing nothing, greatest harm it will cause. What will you choose? Principle or compassion? Before Picard could answer, the red alert klaxon sounded. Worf's voice came through the calm. Captain, to the bridge. We're receiving a distress call. A Class M planet, pre-warp civilization. They're facing planetary extinction from an asteroid impact in 48 hours. They're calling out, hoping someone will hear. Picard and Yoda's eyes met. The Jedi Master's gaze was knowing, ancient, sad. Begin already, the test does. Yoda whispered. Show me, Captain Picard, what principles mean, when lives hang in the balance. Different from the Jedi, will Starfleet be? Or repeat our mistakes, will you? Picard stood, his mind already wrestling with the impossible choice. The Prime Directive was absolute. But so was his conscience. He moved toward the door, then paused. Picard stood, his mind already wrestling with the impossible choice. The Prime Directive was absolute. But so was his conscience. He moved toward the door, then paused. Master Yoda, the Jedi fell because they were too rigid. But without principles, we're just beings with power, using it however we see fit. There has to be a middle path. Yes. Yoda's eyes closed, exhaustion claiming him. But walk it, how do you? That, the real question is. That, perhaps together, we must learn. Picard returned to the bridge, where his crew awaited orders. On the view screen, a beautiful blue-green planet rotated peacefully, unaware that a cosmic executioner approached. And in sickbay, a dying Jedi Master meditated on the cruel irony, fleeing the destruction of his own order, only to arrive in a universe facing the same fundamental questions that had destroyed it. The planet Karana 3 filled the view screen, verdant continents, azure oceans, wispy white clouds. A garden world, peaceful and thriving. Home to 400 million people who had no idea they were about to die. Data's analysis scrolled across Picard's command console. The asteroid will impact in 42 hours, 17 minutes. Impact site, the northern continent, largest population center. Estimated casualties, 394 million. Projected survivors. Insufficient to maintain technological civilization. Can we stop it? Riker asked, though he already knew the answer. Negative. Data replied. The asteroid is approximately 11 kilometers in diameter, composed primarily of iron-nickel core. Our phasers could fragment it, but the resulting debris field would cause equivalent devastation. We would require at least 3 additional starships with tractor beams to deflect it safely. Worf added grimly. Nearest Starfleet vessels are 6 days away at maximum warp. Picard stood at the center of his bridge, feeling the weight of 400 million lives pressing against the absolute prohibition of the Prime Directive. General Order 1. The foundation of Federation ethics. Non-interference with pre-warp civilizations, regardless of circumstances. Sir? Lieutenant Curtis from the science station spoke up. I'm detecting radio transmissions from the surface. They know it's coming. Their astronomers spotted it 2 weeks ago. They're saying goodbye to each other. The bridge fell silent. On the view screen, Data brought up translated broadcasts. Families gathering. Religious leaders offering comfort. Scientists frantically calculating whether their primitive rockets could reach the asteroid. They couldn't. Not even close. Troy's voice was thick with emotion. Captain, I can feel their fear from here. 400 million people, knowing they're about to die, powerless to stop it. In sickbay, Yoda had convinced Dr. Crusher to let him listen to the bridge communications. He sat cross-legged on the biobed, eyes closed, reaching out with the Force. Through the muted connection, he felt them, millions of individual lives, each a light in the Force, about to be extinguished. Mothers holding children. Elderly preparing for an end they thought would come peacefully. Young people facing death before they truly lived. He felt Picard's anguish too. The captain's mind torn between duty and conscience. Dr. Crusher, Yoda said quietly. To the bridge, take me. Absolutely not. You're in no condition. Necessary it is. A choice Captain Picard must make. Alone, he should not be. Yoda's eyes opened, ancient and determined. Face this decision, I did once. Failed, I did. Help him, perhaps I can. Learn from my mistakes, he might. Crusher recognized something in his tone, not stubbornness, but the weight of hard-won wisdom. She helped him onto an anti-grav medical chair. 10 minutes. Then back to sickbay, regardless of what's happening. On the bridge, Picard was reviewing Starfleet regulations, searching for any loophole, any exception. There were protocols for natural disasters affecting warp-capable species. Humanitarian exceptions for Federation member worlds. Even provisions for protecting pre-warp cultures from external threats. But an asteroid? A natural cosmic event? The Prime Directive was clear. Observe, record, but do not interfere with natural development. Even if that development ended in extinction. The turbolift opened. Yoda floated onto the bridge in his medical chair, looking fragile but alert. Picard turned, surprise and concern crossing his features. Master Yoda, you should be resting. Rest I can, when dead I am. Which soon may be. Yoda gestured toward the view screen. But them? Rest eternal, they will find, in 2 days. Unless act we do. The Prime Directive. I know the Prime Directive. Picard's voice was sharp, his composure cracking. I know it better than anyone on this ship. I've upheld it in situations where every fiber of my being wanted to intervene. Because without it, we become gods deciding which civilizations live and die based on our whims. Gods? Yoda's ears lowered. No. Beings with power and choice you are. Use power to help or to ignore. Also a choice, that is. The Jedi. His voice grew heavy. We faced similar decision once. A planet dying it was. Ecological collapse. Save them we could have. But the Force, unclear it was. The Council decided, natural process, we must not interfere. And watched we did, as billions died. The bridge crew listened, transfixed. Haunts me still, that choice does. Yoda continued. Right by our code, we were. Right by our principles. But right by the Force? He shook his head slowly. Years later, learned I did, save that planet we could have. Our inaction, not wisdom it was. Fear. Fear of responsibility. Fear of making wrong choice. So no choice we made? And evil through inaction we allowed? Picard's hands gripped the edge of his console. But if we save them, we violate everything the Federation stands for. We reveal ourselves to a pre-warp society. We alter their natural development. Where does it end? Do we save every civilization facing disaster? Appoint ourselves caretakers of the galaxy? No, Yoda said firmly. Save everyone you cannot. Save everyone you should not. But this? He gestured toward Karana 3. Natural disaster you call it. But natural, is it truly? Through space you travel. Manipulate matter and energy. See the asteroid coming you can. Stop it you can. And do nothing you will, because protocol says so? Agent Keller stepped forward from where she'd been observing. The Prime Directive exists for good reason. Pre-warp societies aren't ready for contact with advanced civilizations. The cultural contamination alone. Cultural contamination! Yoda's voice carried an edge. Alive they must be, to have culture. Dead civilizations, contaminated they cannot be. Data spoke up, his analytical mind offering precision. Sir, I have calculated several intervention scenarios. We could destroy the asteroid covertly, ensuring the Karanans believe it fragmented naturally. Or we could deploy a subspace buoy to deflect it, making it appear as an unexplained anomaly. The cultural contamination could be minimized. Minimized, but not eliminated, Picard said. And it sets a precedent. Every Starfleet captain facing a similar situation will ask, if Picard could violate the Prime Directive for Karana, why can't I for this world? The Prime Directive becomes meaningless. Yoda floated closer to Picard. Captain? The Force, wisdom it teaches. And wisdom says principles tools they are. Not masters. Serve life, principles should. Not death. The Jedi forgot this. Our code, more important than lives it became. And destroyed us, this rigidity did. Riker cleared his throat. Captain, if I may. The Prime Directive says we don't interfere with natural development. But is an extinction event development? Or is it the end of development? If we let them die, there's no development to protect. Worf added, surprising everyone. There is no honor in watching the innocent perish when you have the power to act. The Prime Directive is wise. But honor demands we do not hide behind rules when lives can be saved. Troy placed a hand on Picard's shoulder. Sir, I can feel your conflict. You're afraid that saving them means the Prime Directive loses all meaning. But maybe the Prime Directive was never meant to be absolute. Maybe wisdom is knowing when principles serve life, and when they become excuses for inaction. Picard closed his eyes. In his mind, he heard the voices of 400 million Karanans. He saw the precedent this would set. He felt the weight of command, the burden of being the one who had to choose. When he opened his eyes, something had changed. The wrestling was over. The choice was made. Mr. Data, plot a course that positions us on the asteroid's far side, away from any Karan and observation satellites. Mr. Worf, prepare to fire a spread of quantum torpedoes, pattern Alpha 7. We're going to fragment that asteroid into pieces small enough to burn up in the atmosphere or miss the planet entirely. Relief flooded the bridge. But Picard raised a hand. However, I want it noted in my log that I am fully aware I am violating the Prime Directive. I accept full responsibility and will submit myself to Starfleet Command for disciplinary action. This is not a precedent. This is one captain, making one choice, willing to face the consequences. The Prime Directive remains valid. But today, I choose compassion over protocol. Yoda nodded slowly. Wise this is. Own your choice you do. Accept consequences you will. Not hide behind principles or justify. Act, and accept responsibility. This, the Jedi forgot. This, perhaps you remember? The Enterprise moved into position. On the surface of Karana 3, people gathered in squares and homes, preparing for the end. They didn't see the starship that shouldn't exist. They didn't know that beings from beyond their world had chosen to save them. Fire, Picard commanded. Quantum torpedoes streaked through space, each one a contained antimatter explosion of devastating power. They struck the asteroid at precise points, calculated by Data's positronic brain to fracture it along natural fault lines. The asteroid broke apart, not into deadly fragments, but into smaller pieces that would burn up harmlessly in atmosphere or drift past the planet entirely. On Karana 3, astronomers watched in shock as their extinction became their miracle. The killing stone broke apart before their eyes. Religious leaders called it divine intervention. Scientists called it impossible but undeniable. And people wept with joy, not knowing why they'd been saved, only that they had been. In the Enterprise sickbay, where Yoda had returned, the small Jedi Master felt those lives continue in the Force. 400 million lights that had been about to go dark, now burning bright. He smiled, though tears traced down his ancient face. Captain, Dr. Crusher said gently, you saved them. Yes, Picard replied quietly. And I may have destroyed my career in doing so. But I would make the same choice again. Some things are worth the cost. Yoda's voice was barely a whisper. Learned you have what the Jedi could not. Principles matter. But lives matter more. And wisdom is knowing when to hold firm, and when to bend. Thank you, Captain. Restored something you have. Hope, perhaps. That fail I did, but others succeed they can. The Enterprise turned away from Karana 3, leaving behind a civilization that would develop, grow, and one day reach for the stars themselves. They would never know the starship that saved them. But they would live. And sometimes that was enough. Starbase 234 loomed ahead, a massive orbital facility spinning gracefully against the backdrop of space. Picard had transmitted his full report to Starfleet Command, including his deliberate violation of the Prime Directive. The response had been characteristically bureaucratic. Report to Admiral Nechayev for formal review. Career-ending words, most likely. But in the 3 days since Karana 3, something unexpected had happened. Yoda's condition had improved dramatically. Dr. Crusher theorized that saving those lives had somehow strengthened his connection to the Force, as if acting in harmony with its principles had bridged the dimensional gap that weakened him. Life creates the Force, makes it grow. Yoda had explained from his bio-bed. Save lives, strengthen the Force. Take lives, diminish it. Act with compassion, and the Force responds. Here, in your universe, perhaps the Force needed reminding, worth saving, life is. Now, in the observation lounge, Picard's senior staff gathered for what might be their final meeting with the Jedi Master. Starfleet had assigned him quarters on the starbase pending a decision about his future. The Romulan threat had diminished. Vilek had transmitted reports suggesting that further pursuit of Yoda would be inadvisable. The Borg had catalogued him as a unique threat and moved on to other targets. Even Section 31 had backed off, though Agent Keller's parting words had been ominous. "We'll be watching. Master Yoda," Picard began. "Starfleet Command has reviewed your situation. They're offering you several options. Asylum on Vulcan, where you can work with their science academy. A research position at Starfleet headquarters, studying the Force with our best scientists. Or, if you prefer, quarters on any Federation world of your choosing." Yoda sat in his customized chair, looking healthier than he had since arriving. His eyes moved around the table. Picard, Riker, Data, Worf, Troy, LaForge, Crusher. People who had become, in their way, something like the Jedi Council he'd lost. "Generous, these offers are," Yoda said slowly. "Safe. Comfortable. And wrong they are for me." Picard frowned. "Wrong? Master Yoda, you need protection. Time to recover. Resources we can provide. Need?" Yoda's ears twitched with amusement. "Or want? Safe harbor, yes. But the Force brought me here for a reason, I believe. Not to hide. Not to be studied like specimen in laboratory. To teach, perhaps. To learn, certainly." Data leaned forward with characteristic curiosity. "Master Yoda, you have stated that the Force is weaker in this universe. Yet you believe you have a purpose here. How do you reconcile this apparent contradiction? Weaker, yes. But not absent. And perhaps," Yoda's ancient eyes gleamed, "weaker is not the right word. Different it is. In my galaxy, the Force, everywhere it flows. Strong. Obvious. Here, quieter it is. Subtler. But present still, in unexpected places." He gestured toward Data. "In you, Data? Mechanical life, yet life nonetheless. The Force recognizes this. And Counselor Troy, empathic abilities you have. Touch the Force, you do, without knowing its name. And Vulcans, with their mental disciplines. Betazoids with their telepathy. Even Q, with his reality manipulation, all touching the same underlying energy, from different angles." Troy spoke carefully, voicing what others were thinking. "Are you saying the Force exists in our universe, but we've been calling it by different names? Perhaps. Or perhaps," Yoda paused, considering. "Many forces there are. In my galaxy, the Force dominant it is. Here, other energies, other principles shape reality. But connection exists. Between all living things, connection always exists. Just, expressed differently, it is." Riker exchanged glances with Picard. "So what will you do? If you won't accept asylum, what's your plan?" "A teacher I was, for 800 years. Students I trained. Knowledge I passed on. Die with me, should this knowledge? No." Yoda stood, his small frame radiating quiet determination. "Travel I will. Through Federation space. Through Klingon Empire, if they allow. Meet beings I will. Those sensitive to the Force, even if different it feels here. Teach what I can. Learn what I must." Worf's response surprised everyone. "The Klingon High Council would grant you safe passage, I believe. Your combat prowess they respect. Your wisdom. That would take more convincing. But I could speak on your behalf. Appreciate that I do, Lieutenant Worf. But earn my own way I must. Not through others' advocacy, but through my own actions." Geordi spoke up, his visor focused on Yoda. "Master Yoda, you're still recovering. And there are still factions out there who want to capture you, study you, or worse. Traveling alone seems dangerous? Yes. But alone, I will not be. The Force, with me it is. Always." Yoda smiled gently. "Besides, learn something I have from Captain Picard and this crew. Principles matter. But rigid adherence to principles, destructive it can be. The Jedi Code said avoid attachment. Stay detached. And destroyed us, this teaching did. You, though, attached to each other you are. Care deeply you do. Yet still serve greater good. Perhaps, new way of understanding the Force your example shows. Dr. Crusher couldn't help but express concern. From a medical standpoint, I still recommend at least another 2 weeks of recovery before. Doctor, survived 900 years I have. Trust in the Force you should. And trust in this old Jedi, to know his own limits. Picard stood, moving to the viewport where stars gleamed in the endless night. Master Yoda, you've challenged everything we thought we understood about the nature of reality. You've shown us that our scientific principles, as valuable as they are, don't encompass all possible forms of existence. And you've reminded me that sometimes, wisdom means knowing when to break the rules. He turned back. But I have to ask, do you think you'll ever find a way home? Back to your galaxy? The question hung in the air. Yoda was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant, reaching through the Force for an answer that wouldn't come clearly. Know this I do not. Feel my galaxy I cannot. The connection, severed it seems. Perhaps forever. Perhaps not. But dwelling on what lost I have, the Jedi way that is not. Live in the present, I must. Serve the Force here, as I served it there. His voice softened, old grief briefly surfacing. Miss them, I do. The Jedi. The Order. Even its flaws, even its failures. But gone they are. And here I am. New students perhaps I will find. Different they will be. But need guidance, everyone does. Need wisdom, every galaxy does. Data, who had been processing the conversation with his positronic brain, asked the question with his characteristic directness. Master Yoda, if you cannot return home, and the Jedi Order is gone, what are you now? What defines you without your order, your role, your galaxy? The small Jedi looked at the android with something like admiration. Cutting to truth you do, Data. What am I? He closed his eyes briefly, consulting the Force, consulting himself. Yoda I am. Not Jedi Master though teachings I carry. Not warrior though fight I can. Not exile though far from home I am. Simply Yoda. And enough, perhaps that is. Picard felt something profound in those words. Identity beyond title, beyond role, beyond institution. Just being. That's perhaps the wisest thing you've said since arriving, Master Yoda. Wise. Yoda chuckled, the sound raspy but warm. No. Just old. Very, very old. And tired of pretending wisdom and age, the same thing they are. Learning still, I am. Until death, learning never stops. The conversation was interrupted by a calm from the bridge. Captain Picard, Admiral Nechayev is ready for your conference call. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Picard straightened his uniform. Master Yoda, before I face Starfleet's judgment, I want to say, knowing you, learning from you, has been an honor. Whatever happens next, I'm grateful our paths crossed. Crossed they have. But ended they have not. Yoda extended a small three-fingered hand. Picard shook it, feeling surprising strength in that ancient grip. The Force connects all things, Captain. Across distance, across dimensions. Part of each other's journey, we have become. And the Force, forget such connections, it does not. As Picard left for his tribunal, Yoda turned to the remaining crew. Walk with me, will you? To the starbase, I transfer soon. But first, show you something I would like. They followed the small Jedi Master to the Arboretum, the Enterprise's botanical garden. Among the plants from 100 worlds, Yoda found a quiet corner. He sat, cross-legged, and gestured for them to join him. Meditate with me. Just for a moment. The Force, feel it you may. Or not. But together, be still we can. In stillness, connection we find. In connection, meaning. They sat, android and human, Klingon and Bedizzed, engineer and counselor. And in the quiet, each felt something. Data detected patterns in the quantum field he'd never noticed. Troi felt connections deeper than her empathy usually reached. Worf sensed what his people might call honor, but fuller, richer. Geordi's visor showed him energy patterns his instruments couldn't measure. And for a moment, they were all connected. Not through technology or telepathy, but through something older, deeper, simpler. The Force, or something like it. The fundamental truth that all things, everywhere, are part of one great pattern. When they opened their eyes, Yoda was smiling. See? Here, the Force lives. Different, yes. Quieter, yes. But alive. And grows stronger, it can. If taught, it is. If nurtured, it is. If remembered, it is. The stars turned outside the Arboretum windows. In Starfleet Command, Admiral Nechayev was preparing to end Picard's career or grant him leniency for his compassionate violation. On Romulus, Vilek was meditating on the strange sensitivity she'd discovered within herself. Aboard a distant Borg cube, the collective was analyzing data on an energy field that defied assimilation. And in the Enterprise Arboretum, an ancient Jedi from another galaxy sat with new friends, teaching them that wisdom wasn't about having all the answers. It was about knowing how to sit with the questions together. 3 months later, a small personal transport departed Deep Space Nine, carrying a single passenger toward Bajoran space. Yoda had declined Starfleet's offers of protection and prestige, choosing instead the path of a wanderer. His journey had already taken him to unexpected places. On Vulcan, he taught meditation techniques that acknowledged emotion rather than suppressing it, scandalizing traditional masters but fascinating younger disciples. In the Klingon Empire, he'd fought in 3 honor duels, winning each despite his size, and earned grudging respect from warriors who valued action over philosophy. He'd even spent 2 weeks with a Ferengi trader who, surprisingly, understood the Force's flow through commerce and connection better than most scientists. Admiral Nechayev had reprimanded Picard officially, then privately commended him. "The Prime Directive endures," she'd said. "But so does your career. Sometimes, Captain, doing the right thing means accepting that principles guide us without ruling us. You've learned what took me 30 years to understand." Now, as Yoda's transport approached Bajorans, a world healing from occupation, where spirituality and suffering had forged deep wisdom, he meditated on his journey. The Force was growing stronger in him here, not because this universe had changed, but because he had. He'd stopped trying to make this reality conform to his old galaxy's patterns. Instead, he'd learned to feel the Force as it existed here, quieter, subtler, but no less real. He thought of his new students, a young Vulcan who'd begun feeling emotions without shame, a Betist who'd learned to sense not just feelings but the deeper connections beneath them, even Data, who'd asked to learn meditation despite having no biological connection to the Force. "Awareness creates connection," Yoda had told the android. "And you, Data, more aware than most." On Karana 3, a civilization thrived, never knowing the ship that had saved them. But in the Force, Yoda felt their lives like flowers blooming after winter. 400 million souls, living, growing, eventually reaching for the stars. Captain Picard's choice had been right. Sometimes compassion mattered more than protocol. The transport approached Bayer's orbital station. Yoda sensed something here, people touched by suffering, yet still faithful. The prophets, they called their gods. Non-linear beings existing outside time. Yoda wondered, were they like the Force? Different manifestations of the same fundamental truth? He would learn. He would teach. He would wander this strange galaxy until the Force called him elsewhere, or until his 900-year journey finally ended. "Lost I was," Yoda said softly to himself, watching Bayer's surface appear below. "But found, perhaps, something better. Not home. But purpose. Not the Jedi Order. But the Force itself, in new forms, new voices, new students." He smiled, ancient and content. "Always in motion the future is. And move with it, we must. This, finally, I understand. The transport descended toward a world of faith and questions, carrying a teacher without students who would, perhaps, find students without a teacher. The Force, in all its forms, continued to flow. Alive, long and prosper. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories. Thank you.